Hello, hello. Welcome, welcome. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining. Thanks so much for connecting to this live session. Super this evening. She's pretty much just one of those wonderful women all around. She's been a teacher and a mentor, and she's been supporting me over the last couple of years in so many ways. So I'm really excited to have her on board, and there she is.
Hi, Dina.
Hi, Helen.
How lovely it is to be doing this with you.
Isn't it amazing? Don't you love technology?
I do love technology hugely. I'm a great fan.
We can just have a conversation with each other and lots of people can watch us talking. And how interesting is that?
For them, for you and me.
Yeah.
It's lovely to see you. I've missed seeing you.
Likewise. It's been one of those many things we've had to adapt to is not seeing the people we usually see on a regular basis in the human flesh. So
and you know, anyone who knows you well knows the lovely thing about seeing you is you give really good hugs.
I do, and I miss giving really long, awkward hugs. And that's been really challenging.
Receiving it. Yeah.
It's definitely something, I didn't realize I missed so much was actually just like human contact and like smelling people. That sounds really weird, but you know what I mean? Like the whole five senses. Yeah.
Look, the energetic feeling of people when you're in the same space as them. That there's a real sense of the energy that connects between people when we can be with each other.
Absolutely. Yeah. How are you doing? How are you coping? How are you handling all this?
I'm doing well. You know, as you know, I live alone, so I haven't even been so much as touched. But, you know, I feel that my life in Dubai is about being with people, and I love technology. So I've actually really very quickly learned to love Zoom as a platform, live as a platform, and I feel the connection still, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm happy to be able to be and connect with people in this way.
Yeah, as long as there's an exchange, if it's not sort of throughout the whole session, but either like a check-in at the beginning or a chit chat at the end, like as long as there's some kind of exchange, I think it's really nice. But sometimes, you know, people are like rushing, they'll just come online, do the class and then leave, and you're kind of like, were you even there? Like, did we just have something or not? I'm not really sure. So yeah.
No, I imagine that's really tough actually for yoga, because I know, having been in your classes and watched you, how well you do adjustments with bodies, how you take your cues from people. I imagine that feels really tough.
It's definitely a new way of teaching for sure. Not having the feedback of the breathing and the physical bodies, and checking if people are like if their facial expressions are okay, to see if they're breathing or coping. Is it too easy? Is it too hard? So yeah, it's definitely been an adjustment, and I think it also gives a little bit of freedom to the kind of the student or the recipient, because now and the authority as well, like now they're really responsible for themselves and how they feel completely, you know, in a way that I can't be like, oh no, don't do that, that's gonna hurt you. They just have to really be in tune and notice if that pose is too much for them, or if they want to go a little bit further or whatnot. So it's pretty interesting.
Like so much in the COVID thing, a lack of control, isn't it?
Yes, everything is out of our control. Definitely, that's one of the big teachings is not being able to just find the path and fix the path and control all the elements in the path. Absolutely. Would you like to introduce yourself really quickly?
Well, I'd like to say hello to everyone who's joined us. I'm Helen Williams from Mindful Me here in Dubai. I'm a mindfulness and a meditation teacher, and I do one-on-one sessions during the day with people to help them. I've had what feels like 1,000,000 years of working as a psychotherapist as well. I'm from New Zealand. You can hear it in my accent. I've been here a long time now.
How long have you been now?
Well, I first came in 2006. So
wow.
I know it doesn't compare with you, Adina, but it feels like a long time for me.
I may have been here for a long time, but I only really feel like I've been living as myself for, probably about 6 or 7 years as well. So yeah, that felt like a distant memory. Like growing up here, being a kid here, feels like a different Dina, almost. But I think we, in our conversation earlier today, we agreed on the idea that this, pandemic and this crisis really has affected and impacted every single one of us in one way or another. And in a way that's brought us closer together, but in many ways, it's probably brought us to our knees with the things that we've had to go through because they're out of our control and because they were quite fast and potentially quite drastic. And as soon as we started to get comfortable with this new way of living, we're now being asked to go back and reverse everything. And again, the brain has to sort of take a minute to adapt to all that. But I guess for me, the big topic for tonight is this idea of our sense of self. We've, been kind of coasting along, doing our thing, working, going up in our careers, being with our families. And this pandemic has really shook things. And it's the first time that maybe we've had to stop and take stock of what we've been doing and how we've been doing it. But at the same time, while that can be really positive, I think it's probably quite jarring for the people that really associate their sense of self with their career or their social life or their travel or whatever it is that they were doing that they can't do right now. So I'd love to get some conversations and thoughts around that idea.
So to me, this is a conversation about who am I and have I only ever felt or seen myself through the external notion of my identity as I am this in a career. You said introduce yourself and I said, hello, I'm Helen and I am a.
Yeah.
So, and we all know that here in Dubai, when we meet people, we say, hello, I'm Helen and where are you from and what do you do? So where are you from and what do you do is our identity. And intriguingly, for many of us, we've not ever had to really question that. We believe that what it is we do says who we are. But nowadays, I'm listening to conversations with people where they have been forced to look at themselves through how they respond and react. Like, I didn't know that I would be like this. I've never experienced panic attacks before. I hadn't thought about myself as living with fear. I didn't realize anxiety was so high. And I said to you earlier when we were talking about this, that I've noticed it's hugely polarized, that people have reacted by finding a tremendous amount of joy during this period of time when they have more time to recognize who they truly are. And the opposite, people have reacted with so much fear and anxiety, they haven't stopped to look inside of themselves. It's just fear. And I'm fascinated by fear as a notice board, fear as a signboard, anxiety as a pathway within ourselves. So I've been having lots of conversations answering the who am I really? Like, who can I say that I am now?
Yeah.
I think we're talking about looking at it from an emotional perspective for many people, because how else have we been able to meet any of this?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And who am I without all of these categories and labels and ideas and perspectives that I held so closely before. I think employment is probably the big one right now, with people, you know, losing their jobs or having to move home even because of that. And if you're working in the same job or you've been in the same career for a long time and you're now having to start from scratch, I think that can definitely be that first kind of, yeah, the wake up call to that question. Well, who am I without all of these, without all these things? And can I still, yeah, operate as me in this relationship, in this society? And then who is this new person?
Well, extraordinarily, I would like to say that my experience is the exact opposite is what's happening. That maybe for many, many people who've only ever identified themselves as I am that which I do, nowadays people are beginning to see who they really are, to actually experience the depth of themselves from the inside out. So in a psychological way of looking at it would be to say we have two forms of identity. I see myself from the outside in, or I experience myself from the inside out. And many people have had to, over the last few weeks, recognize that they run their lives with what we would call an external locus of control. So there isn't an I so much as all of these things that are happening outside of me. And because it's narrowed in so much, we've been forced to look at how I'm actually experiencing it from inside of me. So now I'm looking at the world from the inside out. So I believe that this happens as part of the developmental stage for many people when you get to sort of about the end of your 30s. You begin the journey inside. And I've often thought about life from my end of it as like we journey out, getting to know ourselves and forming our identities. And at some stage, we begin to do a great sweeping U-turn, especially here in Dubai. We have to U-turn. We do the U-turn back in towards ourselves, home, inside. Who am I really?
Why do you think that is?
It's natural for us to actually want to deepen our connection with ourselves. You know, our souls are yearning constantly to be known by us. And this whole COVID situation has presented many people with the opportunity to do that, maybe earlier than they naturally would have, because what's been stripped away is how they've identified themselves. And what's arriving is, oh my goodness, I have the space and time now to experience myself on the inside, to notice what I'm thinking and feeling.
That's true, because we're not caught in that hamster wheel of whatever our previous lives were. I mean, especially for me, you know me, I'm a workaholic, recovering workaholic. And so that has really been the best part, is actually to be forced, you know, like you must sit down and take a minute, and what are you going to do with this time in this space? Yeah, there's only so much you can create and make up and do, and at some point you just have to enjoy the downtime and be part of the silence and the stillness. But I mean, you've obviously experienced a lot in your beautiful long lifetime. How does this, I guess, you know, for us, or maybe like my generation, I don't really remember much of the other things that happened. I just kind of heard them on the news, but I wasn't necessarily impacted in any way. And I'm just curious to know, you know, how is this different? How is what we're going through now different from, I don't know, previous like wars or previous viruses or previous diseases, and the previous ways that humans have chosen to deal with it, and how we've come out of those situations as well?
Well, it's interesting. The whole identity thing for me, especially here in Dubai in this last 3 months, is I've been labelled. So my identity has changed. And I now fit under the category of those who are over 60, who must follow the rules that are the same ones as for children. So I can't go to a supermarket, inside a store, anywhere. I mustn't leave my apartment. I mustn't walk out because I belong to the senior citizens or the
Right.
old people. Yes, and so I don't sit comfortably with that label. Yet, to finish the question that you just posited now, I'd have to say that I'm a child born directly after the Second World War. And so I grew up in the first 10 years of my primary school years listening actually to my father, who was a soldier in the Second World War, talking about the war, and listening to my parents explaining how they met before, as the war was going on, but before my father went overseas. He was gone for 2 years. And when he came back, my parents were engaged while he was away. So many young women promised themselves to give the men hope. And when he came back, he was a different man. He was so changed because of the war and struggled with mental health issues because of it after that. So the impact of that was quite severe on my life as a child growing up. And I remember we moved out of the difficulty of the depression into the years of love, love, love during the 60s when I was a teenager, into what I will always think of in the 70s as the great AIDS epidemic, which I remember hugely. I had friends who had AIDS. I knew people with it, and I worked with people. And that was quite profound. It's so terribly impactful, all completely forgotten now.
Right.
There have been epidemics my whole life. I remember being given the earliest polio vaccinations, for instance, because that was rife when I was a child.
Yeah.
Yeah, so to me, this is a familiar situation.
But in a different execution of how, I guess, as a society we're responding. I mean, I can imagine with AIDS and the AIDS era, there probably were just as many fears and question marks about, not knowing, where it was coming from, and did it come from an animal? Did it come from a lab? It's like the same questions. How can I get it? Like, if someone sneezes on me, if I like hug someone, if I kiss someone, if I use their toilet, like there were also so many question marks around that, and probably a lot of misinformation. And then really,
a great deal about that blood, you see. So if you cut yourself or you had an open wound during that period of time, people were very frightened, hugely frightened of it. And of course, people thought that they could catch AIDS by sitting on a public toilet seat or washing their hands in a basin somewhere. I remember that. There was a huge amount of fear. But I imagine in the States it was a million times worse than it was in little New Zealand.
Yeah, true. Absolutely. So how do we move forward from here, Helen? I always come to you and I say, what are the answers?
Isn't that interesting? And I'm a mindfulness teacher, so I'm going to say to you that the way you learn how to move forward from here is to ground yourself very much in the here, is to be here in the present moment. How you live your life now, today, in this moment, will determine what happens for you as you move forward. And it's a very valuable statement to remember. If you spend a lot of time casting forward in your thinking mind to how you feel the future might be, the only available avenues, pathways to drive down are fear or anxiety or bewilderment. But if you sit here and ground yourself in this moment, in each moment as you have them, and you learn to use your breath to settle here, you end up discovering a deep sense of groundedness within you that helps you to handle the groundlessness of what actually is our life. And, you can learn to dance with groundlessness. If we were all concrete into the ground, we wouldn't have freedom of movement. But to be grounded deep inside your own heart and know that you still have the freedom to flow with what happens next, that provides us with whole new and actually exciting ways of living. We're used to thinking we know what's going to happen, but that narrows us down. If we can learn how to live now in this moment, then the next moment, unfolds, and the next moment unfolds from that. Do you know, Dina, the real truth about it is it's always been like that. The only thing that COVID has done is actually thrust it as a truth into the faces of people who hadn't realized that before.
Mm.
We never have known what was coming next. We only thought we did.
Yeah, that's true.
Isn't that
We
true?
didn't actually know for sure. We couldn't know for sure.
We've never known for sure. We've only known what looks like sitting in my schedule, in my calendar, in my diary, on my wall planner, because I wrote it there. But does it mean it's going to happen?
Right.
No, but the writing makes you feel safe.
Yeah.
It doesn't make
Or
it truth.
Yeah, or a potential sense of security, you know, even if you kind of like, oh, or I'm living in a country with like a good, strong economy. I mean, yeah, even then, you know, provides a certain element of certainty, but even then we can never know what can happen globally or locally to change that. So yeah, you're right.
No, but what we do know
security.
how we can see it from the inside out. I know, because I trust myself, that my heart will stay open and I'll welcome what happens next, because I'm practicing that. So I know that. But if I'm sitting right now feeling very ungrounded and full of fear, then I'll bring fear into what happens next.
Yeah.
So to learn how to use your breath into this moment, just one breath and present here, then what I can trust is how I see it from the inside. And the grounding is the steadiness of the compass that sits deep within me. And all those beautiful chakras that you teach about. Grounded in there, then I know that I can trust the view from the inside out.
What if when you turn in to sit with yourself, and it's not as pretty as what you sort of described, this beautiful sense of, you know, grounding, this beautiful acceptance of the present moment. What if you continue to meet fear or anxiety or difficult emotions or difficult thoughts?
Well,
or
then
difficult
if
memories?
I was to ask you, what do they need? So what does fear need? What does anxiety need in that moment? It actually needs your attention on it and the ability to say to yourself, I know that you feel frightened right now. You know, Helen, I know that there's fear here. But in this moment, the only thing that I can do that actually really can provide me with any sense of solace or warmth at all is breathe deeply into my body and say to myself, you know, you've learned that breathing settles you. You're in your mind. You're in your mind, thinking,
Right.
thinking. Drop back down here. Breathe deeply. It's a practice. We learn how to stay and grounded into our hearts. Keep your heart here. If your hand here constantly, pat, 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 pat. I know that you're frightened. I can feel that there, but I'm with you.
Yeah.
It becomes the practice.
Were we ever connected, or are we always disconnected, finding our way back to connection?
We're finding our way home to where we began. You know, show me a newborn baby. They're connected to this moment, at ease. All they want is a full belly and some arms to touch them. And we're the same. We need to know that we can have food and that we can be held and that we're safe and that we're connected. We began like that. So the practice of learning how to come back into the presence inside of yourself is a coming back into remembering how you began. That's why it's available for all of us. That's why we're learning to know what it is we already know and that we've forgotten. And we forgot because we got busy identifying with an external system. This career, this partner, this amount of money, this car, instead of actually this heart, this awareness, this presence, this calmness in this moment.
Yeah, it's almost like you have to take the time and the effort to make it a deliberate practice and a dedicated practice of sitting with yourself, settling into the breath, settling into the body, but almost like a process of rewiring your brain. Does it work to fill the space of the negative thoughts with positive ones? And if so, what kinds of practices would you use?
I would say learn not to pay too much attention up here, because the real truth is in our bodies. You know that as the delicious yoga teacher that you are. The messages are here, the feelings are signboards for us. Our thoughts can take us to Timbuktu and back again in half a minute. And often they're not in the least bit true, and they're not facts. So we teach in teaching mindfulness. I am not my thoughts, actually. I am the awareness of the presence of inside of myself. And if we remembered that, we would learn that we can anchor into ourselves. And that, you know, is my experience over the last few weeks of listening to people. You know, Helen, I've been so busy, I never knew I existed. I've been lost for a long time. And oddly enough, I've been forced to reconnect with myself. This is what people have been saying to me. And I say to them, what are you finding? Well, I'm finding that I need to learn how to soothe myself. I notice I need to learn to be kinder and to make time to have a relationship with myself. But it's hugely fabulous to hear people say, you know, I think I like myself more now than I did before. In fact, I think I'm lost and frightened of myself. So you can't be lost, you know, when you know that you're inside of yourself and you just need some comfort. And people are learning how.
That's
I've
pretty
never had so many people ask, how could I learn to meditate? And I say, why are you asking? Because I need to learn how to settle and soothe myself, and I believe that's the way.
Yeah.
Just
It is the way, isn't it? All the different mindfulness, yoga, self-healing, self-love books, like everything's basically, you know, simmers into this one thing, which is meditation, right? Which is sitting and connecting into consciousness and connecting into awareness. And it's interesting how many ways we've been able to package it and present it so that it reaches a nice, you know, wide group of people. And there's all these different touch points, but I guess at the end of the day, it's the same thing.
Isn't it astonishing to think that we are talking about a practice that goes back thousands and thousands and thousands of years and probably, you know, really came into fruition because people knew to reach out and reach in order to soothe. And because we know that part of our absolute nature is this deep, deep desire to love and be loved, to know and be known. And that comes from the drive within us for connection. You know, I cannot connect with you unless I fully connect with myself. And nowadays, people are learning that more than ever before. People are craving it, I'm noticing. If you drop away all of the pretenses of life, all of the external determinants of life, you recognize that when the chips are down, what I'm left with is, how will I see this? How will I experience this? And how can I soothe both myself and the people that I love? How can I find...
Why is it so challenging for us to just do that? To just, okay, I'm just going to drop my guards. I'm going to drop my stories. I'm going to drop my identity, and I'm going to connect with the oneness of all beings. Like, why is it such a challenge for us?
Yes. Why do you think we struggle so hard against it all the time? It's interesting because biologically we're determined to seek for safety. And oddly enough, all of us appear to believe that we have the answer and that we need to control it. So we set out our systems and routines for creating safety, and we forget that, in fact, if we just dropped and rested, we would remember that we are held and we are safe and that we are one. And that no matter where we come from, our hearts beat the same, blood courses through us, our bodies with their own natural intelligence remember to breathe without us telling them so. And it's curious to me that if we weren't breathing, we'd die. And yet we never pay it any attention. The minute you pay attention, what happens is you recognize my breath means that I am alive. I am alive. You know, there is life here. Yeah.
Like, wow.
I breathe. I breathe, and I remember that. When all the chips are down and we lose everything, my breath brings me life. And I connect with that.
That was beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you, Helen.
We long for it, you know, we long for it, don't we? That connection.
Yeah. My Jivamukti yoga teacher, Sharon Gannon, always says that as well, that, you know, that we've forgotten and we're on this path of remembering. And she talks about actually being dismembered and this idea of like remembering. And she always does this beautiful hand motion of you know, actually creating that interwovenness, and also the remembering aspect of recollecting that our truest nature is, yeah, that it's love, and it's, yeah, that we're safe and we're held, and that this is all we need in each moment. So that was a beautiful teaching.
And you know, the wonderful thing is, once you get to a piece of remembering, it may just be a few seconds worth. You know it is a truth, and it doesn't leave. So you know it. That's what soothes and calms you. I am here. I exist. My breath connects me. The intelligence of my body serves me. Please help me to remember that. In the same way as you would with someone you love. You know, hi, I see you, I love you on a regular basis. Well, we just turn it this way and say, hey, I see you, I love you. I promise I'll take care of you.
Yeah.
It's quite lovely. And that's what a meditation practice is.
Yeah. And we've actually been looking for it in everything else and everyone else except in ourselves, which is probably why we're always a little bit unhappy and dissatisfied, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what are you longing for when you really ask yourself, what is it I'm longing for? To know and to be known, to be connected and to know it, to feel as though I'm home, no matter where I am. At home is here, connected vertically, and we've been living our life horizontally and looking for our identity out there. Once you know this vertical connection in here, then I am home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that analogy. So true. So if anybody has any questions, you're welcome to ask us any questions now while we finish up our talk and wind down this beautiful evening. So feel free. I'm also going to put up Mindful Me's Instagram. So make sure you follow them and get in touch with Helen if you need a chat or a virtual hug. She's amazing at both.
Virtual hugs are astonishing, aren't they? You know, the attention of my heart to your heart is a virtual hug. So you and I have been publicly hugging this whole time. You know that.
That's true. We've been connecting, which is a hug.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's very nice. It's interesting, isn't it, that we can still connect with each other and feel connected.
True.
I've loved it, actually, the connection of people in a screen. I think back, you know, as I said right back at the beginning, can you imagine? My mother could show me the letters that my father had written her during the Second World War in his 2 years away, and I think there were 7.
Oh my gosh.
Because that's all the mail allowed. But can you imagine if that happened now in this whole virus thing? People can constantly speak to each other 24/7, literally.
Wow.
And
that's
yet,
a really good point.
many people, yes, they talk about never feeling connected. And yet we're more connected than we ever could have been. But it's external.
Yeah, absolutely.
My husband told me once that he travelled from New Zealand to England by boat. It took 6 weeks, and a bag of mail arrived when they went through the Panama Canal. That was the first time they had a message from home. And it happened once in the 6 weeks. And he said that was very satisfying, because if someone knew you were on the ship, they could send a letter to you. And I think about that often. I think now, can you imagine being content with one connection in 6 weeks?
No.
That's all that's available.
Yeah.
It's lovely.
Without having that instant access and instant gratification, aren't we? We're so spoiled, aren't we?
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your time and your beautiful knowledge and wisdom with me, Helen. I love you so dearly. I so appreciate having you in my life, and thanks again.
I love you too, Dina. You're a very important part of what we all do here in Dubai. We're joined. Much love.
Thanks,
Thank you for having me.
see you virtually or hopefully in person soon, because you're only getting younger, so maybe you'll move out of the senior citizen age and you'll come and join us.
Yeah, lovely.
Have a good night.
Love you.
Love you. Bye.
Bye. You.